All right, it's great to see everyone again. It's Dustin coming from just outside of Kansas City, Missouri. This is one interview that I have really looked forward to for a long time because we are going to be talking about ELL, which is something that I know very little about, and it's something that a lot of us will be able to have the opportunity to learn some, and what better way to do that than to talk with Melissa Campesi, an educator in New Jersey who has a deep passion for English language learners. So Melissa, thank you for joining us.
Hi, Dustin. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you.
All right, so tell a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your experience, and that sort of thing.
Sure. My name is Melissa Campesi. I'm an ELL educator here in New Jersey. I grew up in a bilingual household. My mother is a Cuban refugee, and my father is American, Irish, and Italian. So I grew up in a multicultural household. My grandmother only spoke to me in Spanish, so it was nice having both languages to grow up with. And even cultural wise, it was nice to have influences of my parents' different backgrounds growing up.
Absolutely. And so you talk about your mother being a Cuban refugee. I would imagine, a lot of, her, because, it was a struggle for people defecting from Cuba. A lot of your upbringing, was really probably molded in a lot of humble, hard work, appreciating the little things. Would you say that's true?
Yes. They came here practically with nothing from Cuba. They stayed at a family friend's house until my grandfather was able to get a job and settle in. The reason they left Cuba was because of Castro's dictatorship. They knew it wasn't looking good over there, so they decided to leave. And they came here and they built their life here, and it was slow and a lot of struggles, but they powered through, and they really instilled that passion in me to always be hardworking and to always be able to also help others who are in tough situations.
Absolutely, and very eloquently said. So we're going to be talking about ELL today. And like I said, this is an area that I don't know a whole lot about, so I'm really excited to learn more about ELL. And part of it is just because I haven't had a lot of ELL students in my class or been in a school with a large ELL population. And so for those that are going to be watching this is going to be very informative, just because obviously you grew up in that bilingual household. This is something you're very passionate about, and you have a very strong track record of being a fantastic ELL educator. So could you tell the listeners, what is ELL?
Sure. English language learners are students from who come into America from other countries, and their native language is not English, so they're here to learn English. So it's not only just learning the language; it's also learning the cultural part of it as well. So it's learning twofold, two ways. So the language and the culture.
Absolutely. And so since you began as an educator, how has English language learners grown from then until now? Are we seeing more students that are ELL? Are we teaching them more about culture, or is it more about language? How has the position grown since you've been in education?
I feel like it is progressing more. I think way back then, it was the concentration was more on English learning, just learning the language, um, memorization, that type of thing. But now we have new studies that show that you have to incorporate the whole child into the learning. Learning a new language and learning a new culture is very emotional. Um, you have to really get that child to feel comfortable and at ease in your classroom in order for them to learn a new language, because learning a new language is a difficult feat. So a lot of times, especially with children, you just in my experience, is just making them feel comfortable, making them feel like they could take risks and know that, yeah, you're going to make mistakes, but that's all about language. Just like with babies, when babies first talk, their developmental milestones, they're going to make mistakes and they're going to say things wrong. But it's just about the practice and practicing in a natural environment to learn the language. And the
Absolutely.
same thing with helping them with the culture.
Absolutely. I remember probably 3 or 4 years ago, I taught at a really small rural school, probably an hour or so north of where I'm from. And we had a few students who came here from Guatemala. They were here for a very, very short amount of time. They were really sweet. It's just, we were such a small school. It was extremely difficult for us to, accommodate to their needs. Yeah, we had our Spanish teacher, but, we just didn't have the resource, and they ended up leaving after a couple weeks because their parents were farmers. So they kind of went from place to place. And so I can't imagine how difficult it is coming into a completely different culture where you don't know the language. It's very, very difficult for those students.
Right. And that's where empathy takes place and plays a key role in all this. We have to know as much as we can about the child. We have to know as much as we can about the parents. Like you said, some of the parents, their working situations may make an impact on the child's upbringing, on their language learning, on their academic learning. So these are all things as educators we have to focus on before even worrying about their academic success. We have to worry about their social emotional success and where they are at, and creating small goals to reach their big goal and taking those small steps.
Absolutely. And very, we have to build that relationship with them first. That goes with any other student, but especially with our English language learners. So we can't expect them to pick up
Right.
English, which is extremely difficult. It's probably the second most difficult outside of Mandarin Chinese, to learn if we don't address those social emotional needs. So when you have English language learners in your
Exactly.
when you have those English language learners in your classroom, what different perspectives do they bring to the classroom?
Oh, they bring so many. And there's different levels of culture that they bring in. And the first one I want to discuss is the surface culture, what you see, on top of everything, what you're able to see, how they dress, what they eat, the language they speak, their flags, music, literature, things of that sort, things that are visible that we're able to see. And I want to say that taking a look at them, that first, the surface culture, is important, because when students are able to talk about, their favorite foods from their homeland, or their favorite music from their homeland, or traditions from their countries, their faces light up. And the best is when these students share their experiences and their cultural identity, when you have other students connecting with them and saying, oh, we do something similar to that, or, oh, this is interesting, tell us more about it, this is nothing I've heard of. So bringing in their perspectives into the classroom and creating lessons around their cultural upbringing is very important when it comes to multicultural education.
Absolutely. So when you get students in your classroom who don't know English at all, where do you start from? How do you build that foundation? How do you begin this? I know when we were growing up, our moms spoke to us, and that's how we picked up the language. You're getting, you know, young adolescents. Where do you start from?
So to start, I would say with that is a lot of using a lot of visuals, a lot of things that we call in ESL realia objects, things that represent real things in the real world. Also, something called TPR, which is called total physical response. That's using your body, physical body, to demonstrate communication. So using those things, but I find the biggest help for them is visualization. And also if you're able to link their native language um, to their new language, to English, that's also helpful as well. And also partnering them up with a peer who perhaps speaks the same home language as well, but is a little bit more advanced in English than they are.
Absolutely. So, what part would you say students have the most difficulty with in learning English? I know, people in other countries will say the slang is very, very difficult just because, Americans kind of put their own spin on English and they kind of make it their own. The slang and the tenses, what would you say is the most difficult thing for our English language learners?
So I find that English language learners, their social language, they pick that up a lot easier than they do academic language. So social language, because we focus on both social language and academic language, they actually have more practice with social language. Like, for instance, we practice it in our classroom, but we also, the students are exposed to it in the lunchrooms, at gym, during their specials. So their academic language, the everyday language, comes to them a little bit more easier because they have more exposure to it. Academic language, on the other hand, such as words, vocabulary words that have to be specific to their content areas, I find that a little bit more difficult because there's not as much exposure to it, and it takes them a little bit longer to learn their academic language because of that.
Absolutely. So, when you have a student come in who, say, the first day of school doesn't know English, what kind of expectations can you set for that student? Obviously, they're not going to probably be speaking fluently, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, by the end of the school year. So, what kind of expectations do you try to build with that student?
Well, all my expectations, depending on the student, is something that I know that they're going to be successful at, especially by the end of the year. So to me, I never push them. Whatever they can do, they can do. Every learner is different. So my goals for them are always to keep in mind whatever they can do successfully in a week or in a month or at the end of the year. So it's just really knowing your student, what they're able to do, and just taking it little by little, because if you force it too much and try to do it too fast, it's going to make them feel uncomfortable and feel defeated and overwhelmed, and they're not going to be able to reach the goals that they need to continue on to their academic success.
Absolutely. So, a lot of good points that you mentioned. Now, one of the things, and this has been a very big topic, and this is something that, I'm really developing a passion for as I'm reading more about, is equity in our material. We see it with our African American students. So, what are some discrepancies you notice when it comes to assessing ELL learners? Is it the stories that are used? Is it the way it's graded? What are some discrepancies that you see in these assessments?
So it's what I see discrepancies in the ESL field is, especially in the mainstream classes, and a lot of the educators, they don't sometimes are it's they're not able to control everything that they're given to their student. Sometimes they're mandated by the curriculum, but exposing them to stories that maybe there's vocabulary words or things like, for example, a fireplace. Some of the students may not know what a fireplace is. So just knowing their schema and their background knowledge, what they're coming in with from their different countries, we really have to know what they're starting off with, and then using that to help build in lessons and exposing them to new things that they're not familiar with. But if a student's reading a passage about certain vocabulary words or concepts that are unfamiliar to them, that's really setting them up for failure, and that to me is an equity issue. So we just have to be cognizant of that.
So what are
what we
ways
expose, what literature we expose to them.
what are ways that we can kind of close those gaps in that equity? You mentioned, some of the literature. Is it finding literature that is more suitable for them? Is it advocating to the testing agencies? What are some ways that we can fix that?
Definitely exposing them to literature works that they see themselves in. I'm a big promoter of the windows and mirrors concept, the windows seeing into other cultures and the mirrors seeing into their own identity and their own culture. So really to start them off and seeing themselves in literature, knowing that they are valued in this new place and in this new space that they're in. And I think that helps them connect, that helps them be more motivated to learn. And I think that's a great start to get them connected and motivated to learn in the classroom.
Absolutely. And when it comes to equity, I'm gonna say two words: access to technology and bias and material. Which one do you think is the most glaring concern in your opinion?
Well, we don't have control of access to technology. Maybe some districts do. Some districts I know offer free technology to the students, but I think we have more control over the materials that we use in our classrooms. So to me, that should be the number one issue that should be addressed in the classroom, providing more materials that focuses on different cultures, different children, different experiences. We need to focus on that
Absolutely.
before the technology.
Absolutely. And I just know, especially with our departments at our school, we're the second ranked high school in the state of Missouri, but I know so many schools are going to be sitting down, going through their curriculum, looking for bias and trying to rearrange things or put new materials to get the bias out of it. So it's definitely going to be a long process for so many schools.
Right. But it's a hopeful
Yeah,
process. I am hopeful about it. I think now many people are going to be involved in this, these different curriculum designs and changes. And I'm really hopeful that this is going to be a great new world we're going to experience for our children and in education. And in turn will help our society.
absolutely. And when I think about it, it's really exciting. The idea of change, if you've read some of my other stuff or other materials, used to scare me. But the idea of change is really exciting. So if we get new materials, new ideas, new perspectives, that's only going to make us better teachers, and it's only going to make our students better learners. So the idea of that is just really exciting overall.
Absolutely.
So as an ELL instructor, you're kind of in a precarious spot because you also have to build relationships with staff. Now you probably have staff members that are going to come to you and say, "Hey, I can't communicate with this student. I don't know what to do." And you're probably going to have staff members that are going to say, "Can you help me?" So what are ways that kind of serve as that liaison and advocate for your students and work with general education staff when those students are starting to be mainstreamed?
Right. Well, I first always try to meet with the teachers beforehand in the beginning of the year, just to give them some simple tips on helping English language learners. Some are the things that we think that are pretty obvious, but it's hard to control. Some things such as the teacher's articulation, rate of speech, using short phrases in the beginning, or just using one word directions just to convey a message to them. So meeting with the mainstream teachers beforehand helps, so they have an idea of how to really communicate and connect with the student. And then we just take it from there, lesson by lesson. Whatever the child needs, I would provide. And most of the educators, all the educators I've worked with have always been open-minded and, share the responsibility with me of giving what the student needs to be successful as an English language learner and as a academic learner.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to go to another direction. How do you build those relationships with those families? Now, as you know, I teach special education. I want my parents involved. I want to have
Yes.
that dialogue. And, I haven't charted the data, but I'm going to. I know the families that I communicate with the most, their students have the most success. I just know that, but I don't have the data to chart it right now. But I just from my years in the field. So how do you build those relationships with those families? Just because, they could be struggling for work. They could be living not in an ideal place in a new country. How do you build that relationship with them?
Well, my experience with parents from all different nationalities, Asian, South American, African, they all want to be part of their child's education. They may not have had the same opportunities in their country, so now they see that their child's having this great opportunity now to gain new knowledge and be someone important in our society. So a lot of the problems sometimes is the parents feel intimidated to come to school events or to attend meetings because of language barriers, maybe because of cultural barriers. So as soon as the school year starts, it's important to always reach out to your parents and say, listen, you are valuable to us. Come in. We're doing a program on, it could be whatever. If we're studying Indian culture, please come in and discuss the Diwali festival with us and explain what are some of the traditions that you do. Even language-wise, if they can't present, maybe they could have their child present and help out in that way. But anytime, truly, especially when it comes to presentations with the parents, if you ask them to say, oh, can you bring in something that represents your country, maybe it's food, maybe it's an artifact, the parents will go above and beyond for you. And I think they just want to feel welcome, and just having them come in with open arms, and they'll be very happy to come in.
Absolutely. And the fact that you're also learning as well, you're learning different cultures. And you may have parents that may bring in, some sort of food or something if you're having some sort of celebration. So the fact that you're also immersing yourself in their culture as well is, great for, your own personal growth. That's awesome to see.
It is, and it's great for me. It's great for the other educators to see in your building, and it's especially great for your students, and for the students whose parents are in there, because it just validates their identity, it validates their culture and where they come from, and that they have pride and they have confidence, and with that comes in the academic learning, where they can be successful.
Absolutely. Now, the last part of building the relationship is building the relationship with that student. So, what are some strategies that you personally do to help build that relationship and have your classroom be that safe space where you guys can communicate with each other? You can get to know them really as people and, really that deep part of their background. What are some strategies that you personally use?
Mhm. So when I start off in the beginning of the year, I always want to set my classroom to be a welcoming place, almost like my living room or my family room in my house. So the students, we have flexible seating. A lot of times they want to sit on the carpet. And we always start off the day or the morning in a circle with daily greetings. So we could work on different greetings once the students become more familiar and comfortable with different greetings that we use in English. But you know, sometimes we'll start it off with, oh, introduce yourself, where you're from, what do you like, what's your favorite color, you know, simple things. And these simple questions, which are like icebreakers or conversation starters, the children love it. They just feel like they're part of a little community, and they are usually very excited to share. I also notice in the beginning of the year, we have some students who do not know any English, and this is called a silent period for them. And this is the part of language acquisition where they're very quiet and they're just absorbing the language and the environment around them. So I never push those students if they want to smile or draw a happy face or however they want to express themselves. If they don't want to express themselves verbally, I encourage anything else for them to do, but I always do it gently, and I never push them until they're ready, and they're usually ready after a couple weeks till they feel comfortable. So those rituals or routines that we do in the classroom really help open up the student to feel comfortable in the classroom.
Absolutely. And just the fact that, you know, you don't put pressure on them, you know, it would be if I went into a place and I immediately had to speak their language or try to communicate with them when I had no idea what they're talking about, that would be a very, very difficult thing. So it's having that empathy and seeing things from their perspective and just kind of giving them that time, that space, whatever outlets they want to use to express themselves, and just letting it kind of happen organically, you know, is a really, really great thing that you're doing.
Yes, I find it very important, and that's where the best connections start off with. I'm a big supporter of the beginning of the year. The first 4 to 6 weeks should be focused on learning the child individually, not just academic strengths and weaknesses, but just learning about the child, how they learn, what their goals are, what are their likes, what are their dislikes, what are their fears. So these conversation starters that we have in the beginning of the classroom are really, I find, great ways to connect with the students.
Absolutely. All right. I want to take a bit of a detour. Now, you have created a website, and I'm going to pull it up right here, and it's called melissacampesi.com. Now, for those that are listening, go and put this in your tab and check out some of the things that Melissa has done. It has your about me, you know, your background. You have Elisa from Cuba, and you have also authored a text. So could you talk a little bit about your book that you've written?
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Sure. The book I wrote is, hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we're good.
Dustin, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah. So go ahead and talk about the book that you wrote.
Okay. So I wrote a book called I Am an English Language Learner, and I actually have
I can still hear you. Hello, hello?
Hi, I could hear you a little bit better.
Okay, so go ahead and talk about I Am an English Learner, the text that you have written.
So I wrote a book called I Am an English Language Learner. And this book comprises of 8 stories of different students. Some of the students that are in the book were my adult ESL students. My mother's also in the book, Elisa from Cuba. And I also have 2 of my friends, actually 3 of my friends, who also shared their immigrant stories in the book. So the book basically shares different stories of immigrants from around the world who came to live in America and their experience when they came. They speak about some of their culture from their hometown, what they miss about their native countries, and also what were maybe some of the struggles when they came here as new ESL students. And at the end of each page is an American aspiration that they share, because I feel like a lot of times when students come here, they have a goal to be a new American citizen, and I just wanted to share that also in the book. Their aspirations.
Fantastic. So when you wrote the book, what was the response like that you got from readers? You know, is it inspiring you to continue writing or continue sharing these types of stories? What has the response been like?
The response has been wonderful. Before COVID happened, I was actually visiting many schools in my area and presenting and reading to the students about these immigrant stories. And the best moments that happened when reading the story is when a child feels like they were connected to a part of the story that they heard a character express, and you would see their faces light up like, oh, I know what that is. My family does that, or my family eats this, or my family wears that. So having that and having that excitement, that exchange with the students is wonderful. Because when I do read alouds with them, I love having that connection with them where we get to share and they get to put their input during the read aloud. So it's not just me standing up there and reading, they contribute as well to the story.
Fantastic. So one of the things that I've gotten to know you is cultural responsive teaching. What can we do to be more culturally responsive in our teaching practices in our classrooms?
Well, there's a long list of things that you can do for culturally responsive teaching, but I just want to reemphasize the one thing is to know your student. That's the number one thing. Know your student and use them, what they're bringing to you in the classroom, as an asset. What parts of them, parts of their culture, parts of their experience that you can incorporate into the lesson so they're able to connect to the lesson and grow from there academically. When things sound foreign to them, or something they haven't experienced, or something that's concepts that are over their heads, they're not going to be engaged in the lessons. So to me, culturally responsive teaching is knowing that child and providing lessons that represent them, and from there they're able to share themselves in their education.
Absolutely. Now, you brought a few materials that you showed me. So would you want to go ahead and share some of the things that you brought?
Oh, sure. Sure, absolutely. So I have this, I've worked as a primary elementary ELL teacher. So a lot of these diagrams that I made are really for younger learners, but I'm a big promoter of connections and connections through stories. And my 3 C's are curiosity creates connection. When you're curious about someone, you want to learn about them and ask questions, and through that you get to know them. So here is something that I called bonding bridge. And right here are parts of a child's story. They could write 1 words, they could write sentences, whatever is comfortable for their child. They could even draw pictures. And the other story is their partner, the partner's story. And then the middle is the bridge. What are some things that are similar? What are some things that they have in common? So I like this activity for building connections and communication. And I just find this to be a positive activity for children.
Absolutely. And just the fact that, it's a visual. Visuals, especially teaching special ed, are tremendous assets. I mean, if you give them just a
Right.
line sheet of paper, that can be pretty intimidating. But if you break it down in charts, pictures, that sort of thing, that can really help kids express themselves.
Right. And a lot of the visuals that I try to choose are things that are seen globally. So, many my students have seen bridges. Many of my students have seen just things in nature that I try to contribute as well. And the other thing is a volcano, and this is called Volcanic Voice. And it's especially during these times, there's students and even adolescents who have a lot of things that are going on in their head and they just don't know how to let it out. So I have some ideas where students can want to be heard. So if they want to talk about endangered animals or social issues or current events, their volcanic voice is one way to lead lessons in your classroom, so that your students are heard.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for showing these. Like I said before, those pictures, give them that choice on what they want to talk about is, a very, you know, it's a very liberating thing for our students. They want to talk about things that are important to them. So again, these are great little lesson ideas. All right. So you have a teacher who is also an ELL instructor as well. What bits of advice are you going to give that teacher to make their experience successful?
I would say to them, if I had to give them advice, is to always base your lessons on your intuition. Know where your student is coming from, know where they're starting at, and to really build little stepping stones for them to reach their goals. It could be weekly goals, it could be monthly goals, it could be bi-monthly goals, whatever it is. But whatever goals you choose should be where the child feels they have reached success, and from there they can continue on to the next level. But again, I just want to reiterate that just knowing your child, knowing the deep in-depth part of them is what's going to help you know what they need, and what they need to grow and become great society members.
Absolutely. And they have so much to offer, even if there is a language barrier, a cultural barrier.
Yeah.
That's a benefit because we get to learn so much about them, their different perspectives. My last post on We Are One Team, I talked about, what makes, the United States so awesome and amazing, just having people from that are different colors, different backgrounds, and just having us all together. That's what makes us, so unique and, really really amazing. So, and again, the first thing, relationships, the second thing, relationships, the third thing, relationships. You have those relationships, you can really go far with your students.
Yep, absolutely. And I agree with you. There's beauty in diversity. So it's just embracing that, and from there, I feel the world can be more peaceful and understanding.
Absolutely. All right. So when you think back throughout your career, how have you grown as an educator and as a person?
That's a good question. I am definitely more comfortable in my skin. I guess that comes with age and experience, but I'm finding in life that it's not just about the knowledge that I have in my head. It's about who I know that's around me, So I can learn from them and take their wisdom to help me move forward in my mission or in my career. So to me is knowing that I'm not going to know everything, but if I listen to the people who are around me, who support me, um, who are giving me, positive feedback and input and insight, that helps me move forward and grow as an educator. And I think we just all have to listen to each other and support each other.
Absolutely. All right. Now you gave me this great idea, and it's going to be a new part of We Are One Team interviews, and we're going to call it the Final Four, where I'm going to ask you 4 icebreaker questions, and I'll answer them as well. Okay. So the first one
Great.
that really stood out
Yes.
to me is, what do you hope never changes?
I hope that cultures never change. I hope everyone's culture and roots stay as rich as they were many years ago. So I hope that everyone's culture stays intact, their language stays intact, and people just value where they come from. And that's what makes this world beautiful.
Absolutely. I hope drive never changes. I hope people are always have that drive to learn more, learn different ideas, new perspectives, new languages, get out there and travel, explore, see different things. Even if you grew up, in the Midwest like I have, get out there and explore the mountains, go to the beach, see different things, see different people. So I hope that drive to learn and drive to explore never changes.
Right. I agree with you. Yep.
Yeah. What is
Going outside of your comfort zone, right?
Absolutely. What is one thing in your life that takes up too much time?
uh, Second guessing myself probably takes up too much time in my head. So sometimes my original instinct is the one to go with. At least I find it with myself. So just over analyzing and saying, oh, should I do this or should I not do this? And most of the time, if it's something that's really built up in your heart, it's the right thing to do, and maybe even be heard for others to hear.
I'm the same way as well. I'm my own worst critic, which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. Sometimes you make a decision, you think about it, and you're like, you know what, it's good that you thought about it. And sometimes you make the right decision at first and you just think on it and it doesn't do you much good. So again, second guessing, being an overthinker, it's, like I said, both a blessing and a curse for me.
I understand.
Yeah. All right. The third one. What, where do you see yourself 15 to 20 years from now?
Um, Maybe teaching college courses on multicultural education, or ELL. And also just, I see myself traveling more, going to visiting global international schools, and being in contact with those global educators to learn from them.
Absolutely. I want to lead. I want to lead and be that advocate for education, on a large global scale. And so like you, I want to travel. I want to see different schools. I want to talk to different teachers. I want to continue to grow the We Are One Team brand and just be that leader for teachers, for students, and watch education grow the way it needs to be, which is removing standardized testing, focusing on relationships, collaborative learning, mindfulness, and letting teachers do what we do best, and that is teach.
Right.
All right, and the last one.
Absolutely.
If there is one city, now this may be a tough one, so you could pick one U.S. city and maybe one world city that you would like to live in.
Okay. Okay, so World City, I know. I have family in Spain, and growing up, I used to go visit there every couple of years with my family who lives in the northwest part of Spain. But we've also traveled to different parts as a family, and one city in Spain that I love is Barcelona. I consider myself a poet and a writer, and Barcelona is just a place where I feel like there is artistic magic everywhere, between the buildings and the culture and its location. And it's just a beautiful and inspiring city. So that's definitely my go-to international city. And a city in United States, I would have to say I would love to live in Miami. I grew up going there as well. My grandmother, my Spanish grandmother, has a apartment down there, and we would visit maybe twice a year often. And Miami's just got a lot of Latin influence and culture, and I'm sure it's changing now, and it's even more diverse. But I love Miami. I get great energy and vibes every time I go there.
Absolutely. For me, I would love, because I love German culture. I love the language and the history. I would love to go to Berlin. Um, just, for a long time, it was the big cultural hub in Europe. There's cities in Southeast Asia that I would like to see, or like in Thailand, just different places like that. In the U.S., we're going to move out there in a few years, out in Denver. I love the mountains. I love hiking, and being outdoors and just exploring that. I love Seattle. I like cooler weather, so Miami would be hard on me with the humidity and rain every day at 5 o'clock. But
I know.
yeah, so very, very cool.
I understand
Now, yeah. Now, last question I want to get to. I always ask this as the last question. If you look behind me, it says "We are one team." When you take a look at that, what does that mean to you?
Surrounding yourself with people who build you up and
Absolutely.
build each other up
Absolutely.
equally.
We are all in this together. I consider you a colleague, even though you teach across the country. All our students are all our students. And so we're all in this together. When we're all on the same rope, we're going to do great things.
Right. Oh, and before we head out, I just wanted to mention 2 projects that we have coming up. So if any of your audience is on Instagram, I created a page for creatives, and it's called the Poemspective Project. So if you go to that page, the Poemspective Project, like your perspective, you could share any work of art, and I would be happy to share with everyone. I'm trying to create a small community there for people to share their thoughts in artistic ways. And also I am working with Kavita Tana, which I know that you know very well. We started a team called Globally Reconnecting, and we'll be launching podcasts along the lines of storytelling with people whose voices aren't heard and are not seen. So just look forward to that, and we'll keep you updated to when we launch that.
Absolutely. Kavita does wonderful work, and she's a fantastic soul. We're all better knowing her and being involved, with the project she's doing. So Melissa Campesi, the link will be right below on the YouTube page as well as the Instagram page. And we're going to promote the talks that you're having with Kavita, and we're going to be a part of it as well. So again, thank you so much for being on. I've learned so much, and we could talk for hours about this. So we'll definitely have to have you on again, or write a blog post. So a lot of great things you are doing, and please keep it up.
Sounds good. Same with you. Thank you, Dustin, for having me.
Absolutely.
A pleasure speaking with you.